Thank you for joining us today. I would like to specifically thank the leaders of our regional health authorities and all of the employees of the RHAs and the Newfoundland and Labrador Centre for Health Information. The resilience of everyone in our healthcare system and those working behind the scenes to support the restoration of health services has been incredible, and we very much appreciate all your hard work. Once again, and since this cyber attack, you've been there for us, supporting our people, our communities, and our healthcare system. You've been on the front lines, continuing to provide critical care, not only through the pandemic, but through this unprecedented cyber attack on our healthcare system, and for that, I thank you. Today, I am pleased to share that the vast majority of our healthcare systems are back online, with most health services restored. There is still work to be done. Restoration work is still ongoing, and the investigation and response to the incident continues. As you can appreciate, these investigations are complex and require detailed analysis, including time needed to determine the exact nature of the information involved. Through this, we are committed to keeping you, the public, updated to the best of our abilities, given the serious nature of the security concerns at play. And I do want to stress that we keep security concerns top of mind throughout all of this situation. Law enforcement agencies such as the RCMP and the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity continue to investigate the cyber attack, and we continue to cooperate with these investigations. In parallel with these investigations, we've moved to further strengthen our IT systems and to protect the public as part of our continued efforts to review and further enhance security of these systems. Unfortunately, we know that we are not alone. These kinds of cyber attacks are becoming more frequent, and we have seen examples across the Canadian healthcare sector which are increasing at an alarming rate. The CEOs from each of the regional health organizations have updates to share related to their organizations here today, and we will begin with David Diamond, President and CEO of Eastern Health.
Thank you very much, Minister Hogan, and welcome to everyone. I'd also like to add my words of appreciation to the staff at Eastern Health and at the Newfoundland and Labrador Centre for Health Information, and in fact across the health system in the province for all of the work that continues to not only address the technical parts of the IT outage, but also to support our patients, and we really appreciate that for sure. We're currently, as has been said, in the recovery phase. We're pleased to report that our services are up and running again, and the majority of our systems, in fact, that support these services have been restored. We're working on a backlog of service now as quickly as we possibly can, and we want to say a special thank you to the public for your patience as we work through these processes. Today, we want to update in three areas, new things that we have identified as we have continued our investigation, and the first relates to social insurance numbers, and it's been determined that a small number of patients have in fact had their social insurance numbers, their social insurance information collected over the years as part of registration processes. Across the province, we've discovered a total of 2,514 patients whose SIN numbers have been collected and subsequently breached, and more than half of these patients are now deceased. The process of collecting SIN numbers as part of registration is being reviewed, and mitigation plans are being developed as we speak to prevent this from happening again. Those patients with their SIN numbers breached at Eastern Health include 1,970 patients, and as I say, some of those folks have now been deceased, and so we are in the process today of notifying individually 900 Eastern Health patients that their information, their personal information, including social insurance number, was breached as part of this cyber attack. And we will be inviting them as part of the mitigation strategies to sign up for 5 years of credit monitoring through Equifax. The second issue, the second breach update, involves patients who have had specialized blood work and specimens collected in the regional health authorities across the province or in private clinics over the past 11 years, where blood work and specimens have had to actually be analyzed at Eastern Health. And so you may have been a patient needing lab work in Central or Labrador or Western, for example, and your blood work would have been tested within our labs at Eastern Health. Your personal information, your admitting information would have been transferred through our system into Eastern Health and have now become part of our Eastern Health breach. In addition to specialized blood work and specimens, all COVID testing as well in the provinces have been tested in our Eastern Health provincial lab. And unfortunately, patient registration information that would have been collected across the province as part of COVID testing would also have transferred into our Eastern Health system and are part of the breach at Eastern Health. And that's because we are responsible in Eastern Health for the operation of the provincial public health lab. While our systems were breached and the personal information was breached, that does not include test results. So folks can take some comfort in that while the personal information has been impacted, test results have not. The third issue relates to the investigation and the disclosure we did a couple of weeks ago. And we talked about patient registration information and employee information, personal information, being breached for certain time periods. And those time periods through the investigation have now changed somewhat. You'll hear different dates from the various regional health authorities. Previously, we had spoken at Eastern Health about 14 years of data, and those numbers have changed. And so we now know that for former employees of Eastern Health, the breach that we talked about last time as being 14 years is now 28 years of information. So employees going back 28 years would be impacted by this breach. For patient information, last time we talked about 14 years as well for patient information. That's actually now changed to 11 years, so slightly less time period. But those are two changes that have resulted from the detailed work that's happening at NILCHI, at the Center for Health Information as we speak. We will be, in terms of the employees, we will be making every effort that we can to identify individuals and ensure that they are notified. However, we do, because social insurance numbers are involved, we are asking people to take action to mitigate, and the Equifax coverage will be available for our employees going back 28 years now, and also for those whose social insurance number, patients whose social insurance numbers have been breached. The 900 folks from Eastern Health that we will be notifying today will be eligible for the 5 years of coverage as opposed to the 2 years that we had talked about previously, and that, of course, is because the social insurance numbers are involved. For anybody in any of those categories who are needing more information or wanting to register for the Equifax coverage, we do have a 1-833 number, and I'll give that out one more time, 1-833-718-3021. That's 1-833-718-3021. And we would encourage all patients who feel they're impacted in any of these categories, and all of our staff, current staff and former staff going back 28 years, to mitigate any risk that might be involved, as low as it might be in some categories. But it is important that if you are in those categories, that you take advantage of the Equifax coverage. You can also visit our Eastern Health website, www.easternhealth.ca, for more information as well. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to hand things over now to the President and CEO of Labrador-Grenfell, Heather Brown. Heather, over to you.
Thank you, David. Like David and his team at Eastern Health, we at the Labrador-Grenfell Regional Health Authority are working hard to keep everyone informed of the situation with updated information. Please check our website for regular updates, and it is the place where all of our information will be there for you to assist and review. And our address is www.lghealth.ca. I want to thank the employees and physicians physicians at Labrador-Grenfell Health, and a sincere thank you to all of our patients as we navigate through this time. We are in this together, and that has been so apparent over the last few weeks. We appreciate your understanding as we support each other and work through. We regret that this happened and apologize for any disruption that this caused. Through our investigation, we have found that social insurance numbers for approximately 20 of our patients was breached, and 4 of those patients are now deceased. We will be contacting the remaining patients through mailed letters, and will be providing information about the free Equifax service, which will provide credit monitoring and identity theft protection services for up to 5 years for those whose social insurance numbers have been breached. While there have been no other changes to the type of information involved for patients or employees, there is a change to the date range of the information involved. We had earlier reported that the breach for our health authority went back 9 years. Through the investigation, we're actually now indicating that the breach for former employees goes back 8 years, so a slight reduction in employees that are impacted. And for patients, the breach does go back 9 years. For any patients who've had their personal health information breached, we will provide credit monitoring for 2 years. And most of our services are now restored and back online, and we are working very hard to address the backlog in any services. Further updates will be provided as our investigation continues. And we just want to again thank the regional health authorities, the Newfoundland Labrador Centre for Health Information, and Department of Health and Community Services as we work together. And we want to thank you so much for your time today. My colleague, Andre Robichaud, President and CEO of the Central Health, will now provide an update for her regional health authority.
Excuse me, Ms. Robichaud, your turn to speak, please.
Yes, absolutely. If our next speaker it would be Michelle House, who's the interim CEO of Western Health. And while we're waiting for Ms. Robichaud to come back online, Michelle, perhaps we can ask you to update from Western Health.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dave, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I want to start by thanking our employees and physicians at Western Health. We would not have recovered so quickly without your support. And to our patients, a huge thank you for understanding the challenges we are facing as a result of this attack, especially against the backdrop of a global pandemic. In terms of an update on our services at Western Health, our services are back up and running, and we are focusing our efforts on addressing the backlog that resulted from this attack. Again, thank you, everyone, for your support and your patience. Previously, there was no evidence of data being accessed related to Western Health employees or patients. And today, I have an update based on recent information we have learned and that my colleague, Mr. Diamond, referred to earlier. From the investigation, we still have no evidence that employee or patient information from Western Health information systems are breached. What we do know, however, is that some patient information has been impacted because of how some information moves through the health system from one health authority to another. Further investigation has found that some of our patients' personal health information that was collected at Western Health for blood work and specimens and sent to Eastern Health Provincial Lab for testing was involved in this breach. So while our systems in Western Health were not breached, information from our patients sent to Eastern Lab for analysis was involved. This includes information like blood work and the specimens collected by the RHAs or private clinics in our region and required transfer to Eastern Health for processing. This is something that happens on a regular basis for specialized samples and specimens. Because this blood work and specimens are registered in Eastern Health for processing, most often this happens electronically, and their registration information was breached dating back 11 years. This means some patient information from the Western Health region was involved in the breach. As noted earlier, because all COVID tests performed by the health authorities, including Western Health, are processed at Eastern Health, the registration information collected for these tests would have been in the impacted information from Eastern Health. Let me emphasize, however, that the information which was accessed did not contain test results. Also, there is no evidence that patients who receive service at Western Health have had their social insurance numbers breached. Patients in the Western region who believe or are concerned that they have been impacted based on the time frames that we discussed here today, the 11 years, are able to avail of the free credit monitoring service. You are encouraged to call 1-833-718-3021 and request the free 2-year credit monitoring service. If you require any further information, our website is available at www.westernhealth.nl.ca. On behalf of myself and our Board of Trustees, we are very sorry for any impacts that this cyber attack has caused. Together with our partners who are here today, we are focused on ensuring this does not happen again. We will continue to keep you informed of the investigation as we know more. Thank you, and I will attempt to hand it back to Andre again.
Okay, perhaps in the interest of flow, I hope this is okay with Ms. Robichaud, and I can share the couple of pieces of information, and hopefully we can get Andre to join us for the questions. Similar to the other health authorities, we've had impacts to report in Central Health, and I should start off by saying that if Andre was able to speak to us, she also would be thanking the staff and physicians and the management team at Central Health who've done yeoman service in the past period of time to help us maneuver this situation, and also to recognize the staff at the Center for Health Information as well. In Central Health, in terms of the social insurance number, they have discovered through the investigation approximately 520 patients who've had their social insurance numbers taken in the cyber attack. Central Health will be individually contacting 102 of these patients by letter, as the majority of the patients that have been identified have now been deceased. As well, the date ranges for breached information in Central Health have also been adjusted. And so former employees, the date range has changed from 13 years to 28 years. For patients, we'd first reported the breach to go back 13 years, but that investigation now has revealed it goes back for 15 years. And as has already been said, if patients, former patients, employees, former employees see themselves in any of those categories and feel that you're impacted by the breach, we'd ask you to call 1-833-718-3021, request the information on the free credit monitoring services. So I hope that's okay as an update for Central Health, and that Andre can join us as soon as possible. The Minister, I'll hand things back to you.
Thank you very much, Dave. I just joined the call. Sorry about that. You did a great job.
Merci.
Okay, thanks very much, David, especially for stepping in. And clearly you have your colleagues back. I'm sure that's much appreciated by them. And I think it probably demonstrates to everyone in the province how we're all here to help out each other in difficult times. So thanks to all the health authority CEOs for your leadership throughout the pandemic and the cyber attack and technical difficulties as well. We can take questions from the media now.
Thank you, Minister. For the benefit of today's speakers, we have 2 media in person and 6 joining by phone. The first round of questions and answers is we'll give each reporter the opportunity to ask 1 question and 1 follow-up. Following this, there will be 1 final round where each reporter will have the opportunity to ask 1 final question. Our first questions are from Peter Cowan with CBC News. Please go ahead and make your way to the mic.
A question for the health authorities as well as for the minister. How much responsibility does the province have here for the fact that this information was being stored going back 28 years in an unencrypted form, making it more vulnerable to be taken in an attack like this?
Thanks, Peter. So, we're here today because everyone is taking responsibility for what's happened. You've heard I think all the CEOs of health authorities apologize for what happened and trying to do their best to make sure this doesn't happen again. We've taken an approach since day one to advise the public with any information as soon as we have it. As I've said before, and the Premier said before, the Minister of Health has said before, the CEOs have said before, this is a very complex investigation and it takes time to verify the current situation. And as soon as we do have that information, we advise the public. And we're working with the health authorities and we're working with NILCHI, who store the health information in their systems, to make sure that the public is aware of information as it comes available and verified by us. And I'm very pleased that we are working together for the benefit of the public.
There is at least one employee who has received an alert from Equifax that their personal information has shown up on an internet trading website, I believe is the way they refer to it. Do you have any indication that any of this information has been misused in any way, shape, or form?
Thanks. So maybe Mr. Diamond might want to comment on it, but we don't have any information, certainly from what I've heard, that any of the data that was taken has been misused. We continue to investigate that. As I said, this does take time to verify, but we're several weeks into this now, and I don't have that information. We certainly heard some reports in the media, social media, I should say, which were investigated and proven not to be not to be accurate and true in terms of money disappearing from bank accounts and things like that. So certainly, I think individuals should take it under their own ability to monitor themselves, as I've advised the public before, and if something is fishy or out of sorts, to call the appropriate authorities.
Yeah, I was going to say, much along the same lines, we don't have any confirmation. We've had some social media reports and some speculation, but none of it to date has proven to be accurate that we are aware of. We have been in contact with the RNC and the RCMP, and as the Minister said, we are encouraging people to make their complaints there so that appropriate investigations can be done. But so far, despite the noise on social media, we've not actually been able to verify. There have been some notices. I've got one myself in terms of some of my own personal data, but I think that's to be expected in this environment, and there's nothing really, even in my own case, to link it to this particular incident, and so I think we can expect those things. We do, though, encourage anybody who feels that they have had an incident that is linked to this to please connect with the RCMP or the RNC so that a proper investigation can be done, because we're very interested to understand if any of the risks involved in an incident like this actually results in a real loss of information or finances or those sorts of things. But again, to reiterate, we haven't been able to verify it up to this point.
Thank you. Our next questions are from Brian Callahan of VOCM News. Please go ahead.
Thank you. It was mentioned that most of what was down has been restored. Can you be more specific, or at least briefly, even across the authorities, what's not back yet?
I'm looking to my colleagues who also could respond here, but most of our major clinical systems, our Meditech systems, are up and running, and there are some our systems that support diagnostic imaging, our lab systems. So most of our key clinical systems are up and running. There are a small number of important systems. We have a system, for example, one of our systems that supports cardiology service that we hope to get back in operation this week. We have a system that helps with scan documentation into medical records that we hope to get back this week. And then there are some other systems that help tie the major systems together. So, we estimate we're 65 or 70% of the way there. But with manual workarounds and other creative ways clinicians have been working, our services are all back, albeit not necessarily at 100% efficiency. So we're getting there with the systems. A couple of the other significant systems will be back in the next few days. In the meantime, our services are all back up and operational in Eastern Health. I can't speak for all of my colleagues, but I think that would be the case across the province. So services are back, and we're almost there with systems.
So also with regard to the systems being restored, at this point, can you say, I know the word taken was used before as information had been taken. Do we know if anything's missing, and whether or not, just do we know if anything's actually missing, or was it just copied and that sort of thing?
So, again, we have confirmed that information was taken. You've heard Mr. Diamond, and I'm sure the other CEOs say that the systems are back up and running, which is obviously good news and a good piece. And I think they've moved very quickly in this. In terms of any missing information, I don't have any confirmation, or no one's advised me that anything has been missing. Again, the word taken is, a difference between whether it was copied or actually taken, right? I mean, taken was the word that the investigators told us that we should be speaking about publicly. And the most important thing is obviously that, as we were asked just 10 minutes ago, that none of that, we don't have any information that anything has been misused yet. So important points to keep in mind as of today, no misuse of any data that was taken, and systems are very close to be back up and running as they were prior to the cyber attack.
Our next questions are from Peter Jackson with the Telegram. Peter, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I guess this is for Minister Hogan. Several government sites in Canada were taken offline over the weekend because of a possible software vulnerability. Has this province looked into there being any threat in this regard?
Sorry, I didn't hear your actual question.
Has this province looked into the possibility that they might be under threat as well?
I'm missing the word. Has this province been?
Have you looked into the possibility that any government systems here are also under threat?
So, I guess we're always a little bit, we are a bit more aware of that this can happen, but and we're always going to be more aware of that going into the future now. And that's one of my comments that I started with this afternoon, is that unfortunately we're not in this alone. This is going to continue to happen. So we are strengthening our IT systems. We're going to continue to do that, not only with regards to the health authorities, but with all government IT systems. And I'm sure the federal government now is certainly since day one when we reached out to them about this, and they realize as well that this is not just a Newfoundland and Labrador issue, it's a national and an international issue as well.
Okay. And I'm curious to know, perhaps Mr. Diamond can answer this, why does the length of monitoring depend on the timeline of the information that may have been breached?
It's actually, Peter, dependent on whether social insurance number was involved. And so for staff, current staff, previous staff going back 28 years, because social insurance number has been involved, and in the discussions we've had with experts, national experts around what the appropriate coverage might be. So the longer coverage has to do with the social insurance number, which means that the risk is somewhat heightened. Now we are suggesting that because there are the 2,500 individual patients whose, and less than that in terms of patients we're contacting, but 900 patients, for example, at Eastern Health, who we will be contacting today, because that involves social insurance numbers. We also will be offering 5 years as opposed to 2 years for that group as well. So it doesn't have to do with how far back the data goes. It has to do with the fact that social insurance numbers are involved.
Okay, thank you.
Our next questions are from Sarah Smelly with the Canadian Press. Sarah, please go ahead.
Hi there. I'm wondering if you can just, Mr. Diamond, if you can clarify quickly with respect to the blood test, what kind of information was breached? I know you said that test results weren't breached, but did that apply just to the COVID-19 test, or was that for the blood test as well?
It's it's for both. So in the testing issue that we're speaking to today, it is your registration information. So it's your name and address, telephone number, those kinds of things. It is not social insurance number, and it is not tests. And the issue is if you present at a hospital in Corner Brook and you have your information taken into the Corner Brook system for lab work that ultimately gets analyzed in Eastern Health, your registration information from the system in Western automatically comes into Eastern Health to allow us to manage your specimen here. And so that is what's come over. So it's the same as the patient admission data that we've talked about from the beginning of this. And importantly, it does not include test results, very importantly, and it also does not include social insurance number.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, I get another one, yes?
You do.
Okay, thank you. Minister Hogan, I'm wondering, can you give us some information about the scale of this breach in relation to other breaches in the province or in the country? Are you getting that kind of input from the experts you're working with, for example?
Yeah, again, I guess, we're still the investigation is still ongoing. We are only weeks into this. I know that, the Irish one is the one that has come up fairly quickly as soon as we found out this was the health breach that happened here. And they're months into their investigation, and it's still ongoing there as well. So this is going to take some time to actually determine what the size of it is. But, I think it's pretty safe to say this is a fairly large one, and one of, if not one of the largest ones we've seen in the country.
Thank you.
Our next questions are from Jody Cook with NTV News. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Just further to a question that was just brought forward. I'm just trying to explain or understand something here. So, Mr. Diamond, you said patients in respect to Central Health or social insurance numbers have been exposed. When talking about social insurance numbers previously, we've been told that they haven't been exposed for patients, or it might have just exclusively be an employee situation. Can you just explain to us why patients' SIN numbers would be exposed?
Andre, I'm not sure if you can hear. That was a question with Central Health, related to Central Health, if you want to respond.
Around the SIN numbers. So in the admitting registration data that has been breached, there were some patients that we had SIN numbers in there. It was we heard the number earlier, but it was just those specific patients. So we're reviewing our protocols for registration to ensure that that doesn't occur, but there was just a limited amount of patients that occurred to. You have to realize that initially that didn't come up because we're talking about, thousands, even millions lines of data that people have to go through and review. So that's what we have discovered, and that's why we're updating you today.
Okay, so again, for clarification, is this exclusively central health patients that might have had their SIN numbers exposed, or is this patients within all of the health authorities?
All of the health authorities, with the exception of Western.
Okay, I just wanted to also, on a point of clarification, Mr. Diamond, you have said over the years. Were you referring to the 28 years for employees and the 11 years for patients in the Eastern Health jurisdiction for having their information plucked? Or do you mean that throughout the last 28 years, hackers have had exposure to this?
I'm not quite sure I'm understanding the question. What we're now saying, and I'll get the numbers here in front of me, so what we're now saying is in our first, or in one of our earlier discussions, we talked about employee information being breached for going back 14 years. We're now saying that that number is actually 28 years. And for patients, we had indicated in one of our earlier sessions that it was back 14 years. It's actually back for 11 years. So it's the time frame. The issue has not changed. It's just the time frame in which people's information would have been breached. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it was the term over the years that I was seeking clarification on. I didn't know if you meant that this information has been exposed throughout 28 years as vis-a-vis anyone could be accessing it over the last 28 years, or just this nefarious group accessed it?
Yeah, my apologies. I don't recall my particular comment there, but it's the incident that has happened in October that we're talking about that would have exposed data going back 28 years or going back 11 years. It's not that anybody could have gotten access to this data at any point over those 28 years, for example.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Our next questions are from Ronelle Legros, all Newfoundland Labrador. Ronelle, please go ahead.
Hi there. You say you'll update the public as you can, and there's likely very little you can add, but can you tell us any more today about the attack itself, the nature of the attack, and was there any money at stake here?
No, as I've said, we will continue to update the public when we have verified information, and we will, we're not in a position to speculate and provide speculative information to the public. So, we've done this several times. The regional health authority CEOs have done this several times, and we do it when we do have information that we have confirmed and verified, and we'll continue to do that. With regards to the details of that investigation, that covers that as well, and also covers the fact that there is and has been and will be an ongoing security issue here. And the advice we've taken from the experts is to say what we said and nothing more at this stage. I hope you can appreciate that we have been as open as we can be by advising the public when we are able to do so, and we'll continue to do that.
Ronelle, did you have another question?
Sorry about that. For the minister, perhaps, can you speak today about the financial impact that this has had on the public purse and on the health authorities?
I don't have any details on the financial impact. Obviously, the number one concern is to make sure that the health system is up and running, and that people in the province have access to good quality health care. And that has been and will continue to be the priority, along with ensuring that the system is as strong as it can be to ward off any potential cyber threats in the future.
Our next questions are from Daryl Roberts of CBC. Daryl, please go ahead.
Hi there. First of all, I was wondering if you have the numbers for how many patients and employees in total are affected by these breaches.
I think the real answer is no. We don't have, we've given some numbers in terms of patients in specific groupings, like the patients now today, the 2,500 patients whose social insurance numbers. We don't have, we have some information on employee numbers back 14 years, and we're gathering it now back for the 28, so I don't have them for you currently. I'm looking to my colleagues to see if they have information but I don't have the totals for either patients or staff that I can give you today.
I'd be the same. We don't have numbers. We're still in the midst of the investigation, so we don't have total.
That would be the same for us in Western Health with regard to the blood work and specimens transferred to Eastern Health. We wouldn't be able to speak to numbers.
Similar for Labrador-Grenfell, and certainly we're all part of the communication is to encourage people to come forward in regards to credit monitoring available to them.
All right, and for Minister Hogan, I was wondering if you could give us any more information on how the government is strengthening its IT systems, or if there's any particular IT systems that the government is focusing on.
No, I don't have that particular information here before me, other than just we do want to tell the public that that's something that that's a focus of other departments, not the Department of Justice, to deal with the IT systems in the province. So that's why I don't have the information here right now.
Our next questions are from Patrick Butler with Radio Canada. Patrick, please go ahead.
Hi. My first question is related to just some of the language we're using. In the last briefing on this, where everybody came together, we were talking about how certain types of information had been accessed. Now we're saying that we can say with certainty that social insurance numbers for very specific numbers of people have been taken. Can you explain how we've kind of how that language has changed and how we can say taken now rather than accessed?
Yeah, so we did provide that information, and again, it's the information we provide once we have it verified through the investigations that are ongoing. So at one point in time, we did have information confirm that there had been a threat actor who had accessed the system. Subsequent to that, we had information that we were able to verify through the investigative process that data had been taken. So we advised the public that the situation had changed and it had gone from access to taken. I try to use a simple analogy, like having access to information. Even me in my office, I have access to all kinds of information. Doesn't mean I've taken it. So there is a distinction in that language. We are purposely using the different language and the specific language in this situation as advised by the experts who have dealt with cyber attack situations before, and to certainly let the public know specifically what the situation is as it unfolds and if and when it changes.
And data from 28 years ago about former employees, it seems very odd that this would be kept on a server that isn't encrypted, that isn't protected. Can you explain why that was the case?
No, I can't actually. So I think that will be part of the ongoing investigation and review to understand how this, if there are pieces of this that should have been done differently and needs to be done differently going forward. So that'll be part of the review, but I don't have an explanation for that today.
I will now go back through each reporter to see if you have one final question. Peter Cowan of CBC, do you have a final question?
I do. I've heard from patients who are worried when they go into the hospital and provide information that information may now be vulnerable. Considering the fact that the province has provided no information about how the attack happened, and we have no specific information about what's being done to strengthen the systems and make sure this attack doesn't happen again, how can you assure patients that when they go in and give some of their most intimate details and very secret information, that something like this isn't going to happen again?
So unfortunately, I'll never sit here and say that I can guarantee that this is never going to happen again. It's happened to us. It happened before us. It's happened since. It was brought up on the call today that it happened at the federal government level today. So it's very unfortunate, and it's a world that we live in now, and we're going to have to be vigilant. And not only are the authorities and government departments going to have to extra vigilant as we move forward, so are individuals. Check your bank accounts on an ongoing basis, change your passwords on an ongoing basis, make them as strong as possible. Always check to see if your information is safe and do the best you can. And we are going to do everything we can in our power to strengthen our IT systems as we move forward. We didn't have the internet, it wasn't very long ago. I didn't have the internet when I was a kid, and now look where we are now. So things change very fast, and we'll continue to adapt with the changes and do our best to ensure that the public's health information and all their information remains safe. We are doing that. We're telling the public today, and we've told the public in the past, that we are strengthening these systems now as we move forward, now that we have been the victims of a cyber attack. I do hope the public appreciates how fast we've moved and how fast the regional health authorities have moved to get the system back up and running after the attack has occurred, because health is obviously always a top, if not number one priority in people's lives. And we do want to ensure and make sure that those systems are up and running so people can access healthcare.
Brian Callahan of the OCM News, do you have a final question?
Yes, thanks. This is for Mr. Diamond. Beyond the actual cyber attack, I note that at one news briefing with the Premier and the Health Minister, the Premier mentioned, and even the Health Minister, as doctors, were familiar with issues with Meditech even before this. What faith do you have in the Meditech system going forward?
Actually, Meditech is an old workhorse, and so there's no indication that I'm aware of that this particular situation we're in actually is related to Meditech. So it is an old system. It's technology from the mid-'80s. Going forward, it likely needs to be replaced. But I think within the health system, Meditech is very reliable. We very rarely have major issues, very rarely breaks down. It's an old work engine. But there's lots of functionality for clinicians, obviously newer technology and different ways of supporting our clinicians that we hope at some point in the future to be able to replace the current version of Meditech, either with a new version of Meditech or with something else that is more up to date. But it's not clear to me that actually the issue we're dealing with is a Meditech issue per se. It's an old work engine that has served us well for a long time. And no doubt it needs to be replaced, but likely not for reasons related to cybersecurity.
Peter Jackson of the Telegram, do you have a final question?
Yes, one other question for Mr. Diamond. Can you explain again the number of patients who've had Social Security numbers compromised? You said originally 2,514, and then you quoted a smaller number from that. What can you explain that again?
Yeah, Peter, there are 2,514 patients across across the three regional health authorities, Central Health, Eastern Health, and Labrador-Grenfell.
Okay.
1,025 of those patients will receive direct notification. And if you do the math, it means that the difference there are folks that have been deceased in the interim. And the smaller number still related to Eastern Health. And so for Eastern Health, our total number is 1,970. And out of those, there will be 900 individuals that will be. So hopefully that gives you a sense of I quoted a lot of numbers, and then each of the other regional health authorities gave you a different number. So it's because the 2,500 was the provincial number, and then we all had smaller numbers.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sarah Smelly with the Canadian Press, do you have a final question?
Yes, thank you. I'm wondering if we can get some more information about the restoration of these systems. What are we talking about when we talk about the restoration of these systems? What is involved? For example, are they being built back from backup? Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Yes, so for the most part, they're being rebuilt from scratch from backups, as you've indicated. And to the minister's comment earlier, across the many systems, not just Meditech, but the many other hundreds of systems that link into Meditech. That has been a massive undertaking, and hats off to the staff at the Newfoundland and Labrador Centre for Health Information for having done that in pretty much record speed. And so when we've had conversations with our counterparts in Ireland, as an example, or other parts of the world who have been through this, we understand how impressive it's been, the work that the folks at the Centre for Health Information have done to rebuild back our systems. And for those of us who work and lead in health systems on the operational side, we're very thankful for how quickly this has actually happened, because it's certainly quicker than we might have expected it.
Thank you.
Jody Cook with NTV News. Do you have any final questions?
Yeah, so it's been about 7 weeks since we were first notified of this breach, and throughout this process we've been told time and again that there are sensitive issues that we aren't allowed to be informed of throughout the procedure and processes of this. Are we still dealing with this? Are there still things that you can't tell us, and expectations whether or not we will be given future briefings on this?
I can only tell you what we know is the thing, right? As I've said, as soon as we have information that the investigation verifies for us, that's when we tell the public. So I can't tell you I will tell you something next week until next week someone tells me that they verified a piece of information through the investigation. Like you said, it has been 6-7 weeks, and we have updated the public. And I'm sitting here thinking about what the CEOs are updating about today, and it's very specific numbers about very specific pieces of information that were in the healthcare system. I think it shows we've come a long way in the last 6 and 7 weeks about what we know. We went from saying there was a cyber attack to now we know that they accessed 3 out of the 4 health authorities, to we know that some information was taken, and now we're providing very specific information regarding how many individuals have been affected. And on top of that, the health authorities are going to be contacting those individuals who are still alive to specifically tell them how they were affected in the cyber attack. So I think it just goes to show that we are providing information as soon as we know it, and we will continue to do so when we know it, but not anytime sooner than that. It's just not possible for us to do that.
Can I just clarify that question really quickly, because I think it was misunderstood. We were told that there were sensitive issues, so issues that you did know, but that you couldn't explain to us, and naturally because of the case. Are you still dealing with those types of issues that are sensitive? Basically, are you still dealing with the people involved in the cyber attack?
I'm not sure what the difference in the question I answered and the question you just said then is, but the cyber attack in and of itself is undergoing investigation by various authorities, and we're working with them on a daily basis. And when we have information that we can disclose to the public, when it's verified, we will do so. There is a security issue here, and that's why we're being very careful with the language that we tell the public. But that language is accurate as soon as we know that language, that's when we advise the public of the situation. And what we're advising them is information that we have verified at that point in time, and not anytime sooner.
Renelle LeGros, All Newfoundland Labrador. Do you have a final question?
Perhaps for the minister, I'm just wondering at what point it's safe to say that the attack is over. Is it when all the systems are back up and running? I know the investigation's ongoing, but is the attack itself over?
I would say that is similar. I'll give a similar answer. The investigation's ongoing, so that is not over yet. These systems are not 100% back up and running, so that's not over yet. So we are still dealing with this situation. We're in a much better place today than we were 5-6 weeks ago, and I assume and hope that the hard work that everyone is putting into it at the health authority levels and the investigative levels will continue, and will continue to improve the situation, and we'll update the public accordingly.
Daryl Roberts with CBC. Do you have a final question?
I do. Mr. Diamond, near the beginning, you said that you were in the process of reviewing the information that is taken at registration, including social insurance numbers. Can you explain a bit more about what that review entails and why you collect these social insurance numbers?
Yeah, in terms of our registration systems and when you come in and be admitted for a service, there is a field in our registration system that asks for a social insurance number or a number where a social insurance number could fit. You know, we're still reviewing. We actually don't see that there was ever a need for social insurance numbers to be collected that way. And so we think that in many cases, this may simply have been human error because the field is there. If we had a registration clerk, for example, who wasn't as familiar, perhaps somebody may have been asked for their social insurance number when we really had no reason to collect it. And so I think there's likely some of that over when you think about going back over many years. There are likely many of those. We're still reviewing. We're not convinced that there actually is a reason or was a reason for having collected those. We just know they're there on review, and so that's what we're indicating to people today, and we will individually for the individuals that we've identified to indicate that it's been there, but we don't really yet have an answer for why we would have collected. We do, I mean, there are a small number of circumstances, some in long-term care and some in a small number of other programs where social insurance number might be necessary, but we don't believe that we collected them in our registration process for those purposes. It's not very clear, but it's kind of where we are. We're not confident yet, we know, so we're going to continue to review that. In the meantime, there are some mitigating things that we will do. We will be attempting to mitigate in our system such that social insurance numbers won't be collected on a go-forward basis in this way, because we really have no reason in the registration process to collect it.
Patrick Butler of Radio Canada, do you have a final question?
I do. Question pour Madame Robichaud. Que dites-vous pour rassurer les gens qui ont toujours besoin d'aller à l'hôpital pour leur dire que lorsqu'ils vont voir le système, lorsqu'ils entrent dans l'hôpital puis donnent leurs données à un personnel, que ces données ne vont pas être volées?
Je pense que au cours des dernières semaines, il est évident qu'on avait des carences. Aujourd'hui, on voit déjà la différence au niveau de la sécurité. On doit avoir des mots de passe additionnels pour avoir accès au système. Donc, je pense que avec une cyberattaque, on a appris bien des choses. Donc, je pense que quand les gens viennent à l'hôpital, ils peuvent être rassurés que on a effectivement fait une revision de notre sécurité. Malheureusement, c'était dans le contexte d'une attaque cyber, mais qu'on a regardé et on continue à regarder tous les éléments des informations, des renseignements personnels sur la santé et vont faire en sorte qu'on a des mécanismes additionnels pour s'assurer de la sécurité.
Merci.
Thank you, everyone. Minister, do you have any final comments today?
Yes, thank you. I again just want to tell the public we appreciate their continued patience with the ongoing cyber attack and the effects it may have had on their lives. As I've said, the investigations that are ongoing are complex, and it takes a lot of time to review and assess all the information that we have coming towards us. But as we've committed from day one, and as we come to understand more about the nature and the extent of the attack, we will update the public accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day.